It's 3 minutes after 11, and the last caller there, Seri, just floating that barrage balloon once again that we will do at some point, and we have done at many points in the past, and it's a phone-in conversation that could be loosely filed under the heading, why don't you care more, or why do you keep letting them get away with this? I did, and I still do, argue last Friday that it is changing, that blindfold, that being able to shout, get Brexit done, even when you were presented with evidence of quite appalling behaviour, is losing its allure. It's like a spell that is now being broken. Owen Paterson, possibly the first to discover that shouting, get Brexit done, when it's not remotely relevant, is not going to work forever. His allies, of course, including Charles Moore of the Daily Telegraph, gave it a good go. They tried to turn it into a conversation about Brexit, to my mind, quite incredibly and shamefully. But that's worked so far and so well for them in the past that they probably just thought, well, we'll just shout, get Brexit done, and then we'll let Owen off the hook. We'll all vote to let him off the hook, and the public can go hang. So I do think it's changing. But that question of why you still go along with this, if the cap fits, doff it, that is one. But the problem is I don't get those callers much anymore. Probably doesn't help when they do ring in and make complete fools of themselves and end up getting faded out by Keith. I don't know if people are ready to ring me and say I still defend Boris Johnson because what you have to do is admit the problems. I don't know how Trumpish it's getting now. So you're going to actually deny the evidence of your eyes and ears. You're going to say, well, I still defend Donald Trump because he didn't actually lose the election and because Bill Gates is trying to run a satanic conspiracy, a satanic paedophile conspiracy, and he is the only man who can save us. I don't want those calls, really. I mean, they're funny, but I'm not sure that they advance much, except perhaps our understanding of how crackers they are. So how could you do this? I do not know. 5 minutes after 11 is the time. And you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So we change tack now, and we come back to a tale that I told you on Friday and again yesterday we would come back to. And I think now it's fair to say that I got this one wrong. I think I acted more in hope, perhaps, than expectation. But having spoken to people in care homes, having spoken to residents of care homes, one of whom has already been given his marching orders because, according to him, not according to me, there will not be enough staff in the care home where he currently resides come Thursday to safely look after him. So he is being moved somewhere else, somewhere less suitable and, for him at least, less welcome. We've spoken to care home managers and owners who are genuinely worried about what is going to happen on Thursday when up to 10% of their workforce will be required to be summarily fired. And we've spoken to care home workers. So I presumed that Sajid Javid would roll over on this. And I don't know that it would necessarily have been as humiliating a reverse ferret as the ones one loses track of how many Boris Johnson has undertaken, but as for example, last week's humiliating reverse ferret on the standards vote. Because Sajid Javid could have said, look, what we did, and this actually I think would at least have, I'm doing it again, I'm about to kind of very mildly stick up for Sajid Javid, which means tomorrow he'll probably be caught in some almighty scandal. It'll turn out he's been on the British Virgin Islands for the last 6 months, and what's been popping up in the House of Commons is actually a hologram. So It's not a full-throated defence of the man, but psychologically, the threat to fire you if you don't get vaccinated is quite interesting. It's interesting for a bunch of reasons, but the most fascinating psychological element of it is it can go either way. Some people will respond to that threat by going to get vaccinated, which I think, certainly in the early aftermath of Macron issuing a similar diktat, it worked in France. The French uptake rate rocketed in the aftermath of Macron suggesting that you will need to be vaccinated to get into various places. And it can also go the other way. And there are so many other variables out there that I think Sajid Javid took a gamble. Did he inherit the policy anyway from Matt Hancock? So he inherited it anyway. But the calculation was, here are, let's say 60,000 people. I forget what it would have been when the threat was actually issued. Here are 60,000 people who are not currently double vaccinated. Right? And if we tell them they're going to lose their jobs if they don't get vaccinated, then they'll get their backsides in gear and they'll get vaccinated, right? And it was a psychological gambit. But it didn't work because there are 60,000 people who are going to lose their jobs on Thursday. So I don't know actually whether or not politically it would have been sustainable, whether or not it would have been something he could have, it'd be his first big moment. They've already rode back on the number of new GPs, but of course, given that most of the media is normally still waving their pom-poms around and cheering this lot to the rafters, or at least they were when it was announced that the promise of 6,000 new GPs was simply not going to be met, because funnily enough, when you turn the British public or try to turn the British public against GPs, some of them retire early. And then other people, younger people, decide that perhaps they don't want to be GPs after all. If only there was some way of just predicting that by being vile to people whose professional decisions are based at least in part upon a vocation, you might actually reduce the enthusiasm that people have for either doing that job or joining that profession. But that, of course, is for the Daily Mail and their fellow travellers to answer. So he's already had to row back on the 6,000 new GPs, but that hasn't got anything like the coverage that it would have got if it had been, for example, a Labour Health Secretary, or a story that could have somehow been turned into an invitation to attack some of the usual suspects. So maybe he just didn't want to do this. Maybe he just didn't want to row back on this, on the vaccines thing. I don't know. It's Tuesday. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that he will change his mind between now and Thursday, but the fact that they are expected to announce later today that the 80,000 to 100,000 NHS workers who are currently unvaccinated will have to be fully vaccinated against COVID by next spring if they want to keep their jobs. That suggests to me that there ain't going to be no rollback on the care homes thing. So this is not a phone. It stopped being a conversation about should they or shouldn't they get jabbed. I wish that it still was, because we might make some progress. But it isn't. Do you know what? I know you're going to laugh when I say this because it's me, but it is actually now like Brexit. It's happened. There is no point relitigating the argument that would change the reality that we currently inhabit. So, of course, we should not have Brexited, but we did, so we have to make the best of it. And, of course, everybody in care homes should be vaccinated, but they're not. So what are we going to do about it is the question. What are we going to do about it? And the answer, as it stands, unless it is refuted at any time soon, is that they are going to fire 60,000 people on Thursday. They are going to have to insist that one care home worker in 10, it is estimated, will be lost in half of council areas in England when double jabs for coronavirus become compulsory. So this kicks in on Thursday. The Care Quality Commission has already intervened to say it would take action if necessary to ensure people's safety. I don't know what that means. Social care experts warn that this is going to, or is very likely to, exacerbate existing staff shortages, leaving people without the care they needed. And one of the biggest trade unions is still urging the government to reconsider its positions. 76 out of 151 upper-tier local authorities in England, that's more than 10% of staff in care homes for other older adults, were not fully vaccinated, according to stats issued at the end of last month. So the question is not, why aren't they vaccinated? There are a million different answers to that, and clearly the deliberate efforts of people in politics and particularly in the media to undermine the success of our vaccine rollout is going to be a huge part of the problem. But this is a little bit like complaining about arsonists after your house has burnt down. The challenge now is to work out what you're going to do with the scenario you are presented with. And the scenario you are presented with is a house that's burnt down. Yes, it would be nice to think the arsonists will be brought to justice at some point in the future, but right now we've got a pile of ashes and nowhere to sleep. We've got 60,000 care home workers who are facing the sack on Thursday. So the conversation about should they or shouldn't they get vaccinated, or why haven't they get vaccinated, that's over. At least I think it is. You're welcome to challenge me on that, actually. 03456060973. I'd like to be wrong on this occasion. You could say, no, it's not too late. Well, it is too late. It's Thursday that this happens. It's Tuesday today. You do the maths. So I'm going to ask you, and I know you've got a lot on your plate, and I know you've probably got more on your plate at the moment than you've had at any point in the last 6 years, and I know that you're very worried about Thursday, and I know the last thing you thought you'd be doing when you got up this morning was ringing up a gob on a stick on your radio and laying down the law and setting out the score. But I really, really, really want to know, what's going to happen on Thursday? What is going to happen on Thursday? 03456060973 is the number that you need. You can, if you want. I may not give you the warmest of welcomes, but I'll certainly give you a fair crack of the whip. Tell me why it is the wrong conversation to be having. I'll do my best not to bridle. And in fact, I promise I won't bridle, because I've issued the invitation now that it is still the case that we should be talking about why aren't these people getting vaccinated? Or you could... I'm not going to take a call from people telling me why they shouldn't be vaccinated, because you're crackers, all right? I'm sorry if that upsets you, but deal with it, snowflake. That's, I think, how you play those cards, isn't it, in this current context? So if you think that the conversation about why they're not getting vaccinated is still worth having, we'll have it. But I'm not convinced, far from convinced, because today is Tuesday, tomorrow, you might want to write this down, Keith, is Wednesday, and the day after Wednesday is Thursday. And on Thursday, 60,000 care home workers face the sack. What does that do to your care home? 03456060973. To your mum's care. 03456060973. To your life. And I'll tell you something else for nothing. I don't think we should move on to the conversation about whether or not it's right or wrong to extend this to the NHS next spring until we see what happens this week. This is specifically and exclusively about care homes. It's specifically and exclusively about the estimated 60,000 people that don't get vaccinated, get fired. And it's specifically and exclusively a question about what happens to you on Thursday. It's 11:15. 19 minutes after 11 is the time. What is going to happen? In the last full year, for which we have statistics, there were over 100,000 vacancies at any one time in the care sector. We can be fairly confident that the dreaded B word would have made that situation worse, because it's made pretty much every bad situation in the country worse. And on Thursday, they almost hit turbocharge on staff shortages by opening the door to the very real possibility, if not the certainty, of some 60,000 unvaccinated staff, unfully vaccinated staff being shown the door. What happens in your care home? Nolette is in Colchester. Nolette, what can you tell us?
Good morning to you. I hope some matrons from nursing homes are listening and take the opportunity to ring in and give you the real picture of what it's like.
I'm sure they will. They usually do, but, you know, we don't want to jinx it.
My mother worked as an NHS nurse all her life and then went into running nursing home. And speaking for her, I can say without a doubt that the patients, the residents, for all matrons come first. There will always be problems with staffing, when there is a deficit against what is legislated for and required.
Which is a permanent state of affairs, isn't it? It's just a question of how big the deficit is.
And people box and cocks. And speaking for my dear dead mother, yes. I know without doubt she would say she would rather have fewer staff and know her patients and her residents were safe and then have to box and cocks.
What does box and cocks mean? I'm just being a bit dozy, sorry. Does it just mean sort of scrimp and save? You know, make do?
You'll be slower on the medicine round.
Oh, okay.
You'll be slower when you're doing the lunches.
Right.
You will be,
so when you said cocks, I thought it might have involved going to the British Virgin Islands. I was a little bit confused. The problem is, and I know you're reporting back on your mum and the approach she would take, but one bloke who runs the independent care group, the chairman of the independent care group, he said at the weekend that up to 500 homes across England could actually have to close. So you can box and cocks all you like. If the doors are closed...
I'm pleased, don't think I'm minimising the pressure and the stress that is put on the care homes and the staff that are in there. Absolutely not. I'm pleased that I don't interpret my comments that way.
I'm not.
I think I think that it is going to be exceedingly difficult if these staff do not get vaccinated and lose their jobs. I think the issue is, though, if you look in America, and I think you have to look at America, where they've mandated vaccines, in aviation, in police, in fire, they have held their line until the 11th or 12th hour, till midnight.
They have. That's
and
a great
the
point.
numbers of people who are vaccinated, who have decided on balance that they would get the vaccine, has increased significantly.
There's a problem here, and I'm glad you've raised that point, because I think it is a valid one. And again, I'm just thinking out loud. I think it was 10,000 police officers in New York said they'd all quit if they had to be vaccinated.
Indeed.
And then when it actually happened, I think fewer than 100 actually walked the plank. But care home workers, I mean, police officers are jobs for life. Hard to know what else they could do. Quite well paid, decent pensions. Same with aviation. Care home workers, arguably much less valued, much more mobile, much...
I wouldn't say much less valued, but I understand what you mean.
By
when you
society,
say that.
by society, I would say they were less. But yes, not by the people.
I agree.
So there's. I mean, I hope you're right, and I hope in the next 48 hours we see a sort of a quiet stampede for the vaccination centres. But I don't know if I put much money on it, Nolette.
Can I? I know you don't want to go down this road, and I understand why you don't. About actually the decision to mandate vaccines.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if this had the fatality rate of Ebola, in children, all right, this wouldn't be a matter of, I accept the death rate. It would be a matter of principle here. Are you saying we will not get vaccinated no matter what the death rate is?
Some people are, but they don't do that.
The death rate's not bad.
No,
because if it was higher, no,
but they don't do that. They don't do that.
90% in some areas.
I know, but you see what you're doing is you're bringing science and knowledge to a debate that is not about science and knowledge. So the people who would be arguing with you would deny your facts, you see. They'd say, don't be ridiculous. Some of them would say there's no such thing as coronavirus. Some of them would say it was a hoax. Some of them would say, no. All of these numbers have been released by Big Pharma and Bill Gates to curdle your mind and lead you into, I don't know where, Woolworths. So do you see what I mean? That's why I don't go down the road, because there's no point. There's either honesty and understanding, which you display, or the other lot who get far too much airtime as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very difficult thing to talk about, isn't it?
It's incredibly difficult, but that's why we're doing it from this angle. What happens on Thursday? You say, hopefully, fingers crossed, disaster will be averted because enough people at the 11th hour will get the jab in the arm. I hope you're right.
Yes.
I hope you're right.
Yes.
I mean, if you're wrong, well, that's the question I'm really asking. If you're wrong, what happens on Thursday? If they don't do it, if it doesn't work, if we don't see a repeat of what's happened in France or the New York Police Service, what actually happens? 25 after 11. And if we return to this tomorrow, we may well ask whether or not Sajid Javid should change his mind at the last minute. And then, of course, we open the door to a slightly more complicated debate, or a slightly more passionate debate than the one I'm having now. But as Nolette reminded us, this is the conversation we're having now, is what is going to happen on Thursday. Simon's in Taunton. Simon, what do you reckon?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I run the Care Provider Association in Somerset. Excuse my dog.
That's quite all right.
James, these people have gone. They've gone. I mean, care home providers had to put things in place to be able to replace those members of staff when they left. They haven't been able to sit around and wait until the 11th of November. Most of those people have gone. In Somerset, in fact, most of those staff have left and gone to work in other sectors, which you won't be surprised to hear, because a lot of sectors are paying more, than care providers are able to pay themselves to retain those staff. And
even if you were able to pay more, they still don't want to be vaccinated.
Well, I mean, I think that's a tiny minority, and I think it's a bit of a... In a way, I think the significant problems that we're facing and care home providers are facing is the ongoing 15-year underinvestment by the government and withdrawal of funding from local authorities.
I do agree with you, but you'll appreciate that today is Tuesday, tomorrow is Wednesday, and on Thursday, the chairman of the Independent Care Group, which is the recognised representative body for all independent care providers in York and North Yorkshire, says that up to 500 homes could close. So I'm glad that you think you're a little better prepared for it than some of the reporting perhaps acknowledges, but I mean, these people aren't lying, are they? The General Secretary, the General Secretary of Unison, calling for a change of heart from the government, just a delay on the double jab rule, or to ditch it altogether. She's not deliberately scaremongering. And Simon Bottery, the senior fellow in social care at the King's Fund think tank, saying that workers, the sector will lose workers. The only question is how many. The government's own estimate is about 40,000 staff could leave as a direct result of the policy. It's the government's own estimate. So I wish I could take you and use you as a salve to calm my beating heart, but there are a heck of a lot of other voices on the other side of the road.
No, what I'm saying is that the challenges facing care homes and the sector more generally is a huge recruitment problem. That what's happened already in the deadline looming on the 11th is as part of the huge challenge care home managers are facing in holding on to staff anyway. A lot of care homes in our area are down to 70% occupancy. They're already.
When do you have to close?
When do homes have to close?
Yes.
Well, I mean, when you can't stack up and you can't balance the books effectively.
No, I mean in terms of, is there a legal requirement for staffing levels? Is there a point at which if you simply haven't got the bodies, regardless of whether or not you've got the money to pay them, then you have to actually
absolutely
close? Where do we know where that is?
I don't know the accurate figures, but if you've got a large care home, I know some care homes that have already had to close wings because they're not getting referrals in, having to lay off staff, and then they can't get them back. Local authorities are not referring at the rates that they would require for people, for them to be able to run their businesses.
Why not?
Because there's an aspiration to support more people in their own homes, and that direction of travel has been sped up by the pandemic, where families are choosing, quite understandably really, they're choosing not to place their elderly relatives in care homes
because of the scare. I mean, you raise some interesting points, and obviously speak from experience. But you did start by saying that the people we're talking about will have already left, and I want to make it categorically clear that's not true. Well,
it depends who you speak to. I mean, I think that the recruitment.
Well, let's take the government's own estimate then.
Yeah, but I think
that's 40,000. So I appreciate that you've got other recruitment challenges, and I hope this doesn't sound callous, but join the queue. Hauliers over there, shopkeepers over there, hoteliers over there, turkey farmers over there, fruit pickers over there, doctors over there, nurses over there. Oh, crikey, the only thing we're not short of, boom, is shortages. It's coming up to 11:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. What will happen on Thursday? And Simon's points about the broader malaise facing the sector notwithstanding, not an answer to the question, what is going to happen on Thursday is what I want to know. Because for the umpteenth time, today is Tuesday and the clock is ticking. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 26 minutes to 12 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we are concerned, I think duly concerned. Do you say that, duly concerned? I meant it as the opposite of unduly concerned, but I don't know if I've ever heard the phrase duly concerned. We are correctly concerned. We are extremely concerned about what's going to happen on Thursday. Slightly reassured, perhaps, by Simon's call, suggesting that certainly in his neck of the woods, all of the staff that are likely to be unable to continue to work in the care sector come Thursday have already left. It doesn't tally with the broader picture, or certainly with the reported statistics. So what's going to happen where you are? 0345 6060973 is the number you need. And I'd warn you, the government's own estimate is about 40,000 staff potentially leaving as a result of the policy. I think the first caller, was it Jolette? I think we've probably all got to put all our eggs in her basket, haven't we? And just hope that as the deadline looms closer, it acts as a sort of catalyst for thousands and thousands of care home workers to just get it done, because the stakes are so high. But then I worry, as I've said to you, that because the wages are so low and the morale is quite low and the sector is already quite beleaguered, I wonder if the stakes are that high for people who could, as Simon just suggested, quite easily find themselves a probably better paid job in another sector facing massive shortages, which of course have absolutely nothing to do with telling hundreds of thousands of people to go back where they came from. 11:36 is the time. Christine is in Wanstead. Christine, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm glad you're taking this further, James, than a lot of the reporting's gone. As far as your question is, yes. Let's say that we would have to pay staff, even if they change their mind now.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm a care home owner. I didn't make that clear.
Right, you are.
If they change their mind now, and they won't. I've spoken to them. I've had to dismiss 5 staff.
Oh.
Which is a fifth of our staff.
Crikey.
We've been targeted by anti-vaxxers who are saying that, yes, if you want to work in care, you have to have an untested vaccine in your arm. Okay? Personally, we've been targeted, which is not fair.
It's not an untested vaccine, as you know, but I'm not
decision,
opening
but people do not understand that it's the government's decision. Okay. Our staff have already left.
Oh, sorry. Can I pause you there? I'm just going to pause you there, and you're going to have all the time in the world you need. So I just want to clarify exactly what it is you're saying. So whether you approve or disapprove of the so-called mandate, you have no choice but to introduce it. So for anti-vaxxers, who are clearly never the sharpest knives in the drawer, but in this context, they're being doubly, even more stupid than usual, because they are essentially coming to attack you for imposing a government policy that if you didn't impose, you'd be in breach of the law.
Exactly.
Thank you. Carry on.
Okay, so even if we started the process back in April when the government put out its consultation about this, they consulted about whether care home staff in care home staff in domiciliary care and carers who go into people's homes, whether they should all have to be vaccinated. The decision came back in May, I think it was May, saying yes, they should, but for care homes only, not for domiciliary care.
Right.
So what's happening with our staff is that they're going either to the NHS or they're going into domiciliary care, because there's no reason why they can't go into people's houses.
And come next spring, the NHS, they may just have kicked the can down the road, but that's precious little help to you in the immediate emergency. So. Yes. I hesitate to ask you this question because I've got a feeling neither of us are going to like the answer much. But what's going to... I mean, of all the people that need to go gone now, this is the fifth of your workforce that has gone.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? What happens not on Thursday, what happens now?
There's a scurry amongst all the homes to poach staff.
Right.
It's got quite difficult.
Yes.
In a relatively small community, everybody knows everybody else. They all know what they earn.
Right.
And it goes around in circles. So... people come to us because they like a particular home. People go somewhere because they get another X pence more per hour, however it works out. We're all scrabbling for the same staff. But beyond that, the bigger question is that we've lost staff because of Brexit. The whole sector has.
Yes.
Now we're having to import staff. So today I am going to be finalising my application for a sponsorship visa to bring staff in from overseas, probably from India, Sri Lanka, parts of Africa, maybe the Philippines. They come over here. They'll work as carers, senior carers, for a while until they receive what's called their PIN to become a registered nurse in this country. And that's what all care homeowners are looking at doing, because unless they're very lucky and they can find a pool of staff, which most can't, that is what will be happening.
And is this a scheme that's always been in place?
Yes, I can't remember exactly how many weeks or months ago.
It's brand new,
is it? Senior carers were added to the
approved
required list.
Okay, and then what qualifications do they need to come over?
They have to. They're usually nurses in their own country.
They're already nurses in their own country.
There's been a problem because some of them had vaccinations that weren't recognised here, so they weren't going to be allowed in. But I think the government have gone past that. Just today, the latest thing is we have to actually check on the door on Thursday everybody who comes through our door, be it our staff, be it a plumber, be it an electrician, and they have to have the right documentation, which is the COVID pass. The domestic COVID pass doesn't seem to work for this, but the DHSC aren't really explaining to us how we operate this system. So it looks as though they have to have, anybody who comes through our door has to have a pass, a COVID pass, for travel overseas in order to get into our care home.
Is that not the one we've got on our phones?
Well, yes, but there are two types. There's a domestic and there's an overseas.
No, there are, but so...
I'm just talking about the irony of this. You have to go into an overseas territory, basically, to go into a care home. It's just an irony.
Listen, Christine, to do what you do, you have to be a mistress of plate spinning, clearly. You have to be able to keep them all going without anybody even noticing that there is human agency involved in keeping them spinning. But it sounds to me, and I don't know if we've spoken before, so I hope I'm not hearing things that aren't real, but it sounds to me as if you are quite, could I say even scared?
Yes, it's worrying because we just don't know how it's going to go. If we bring staff in, if we lose them for any reason, we just don't know how we're going to replace them at this point in time.
And Thursday is, for you, the deadline is in many ways even past. How long, in best case scenario, will it be before your newly sponsored staff start?
Yes, 3 months.
So best case scenario is that you're going to have a Christmas with a skeleton staff.
Yes, there was another thing that was brought in which we didn't do. There was a bit of a loophole brought in in the sense that there could be the voluntary exemption form. So people who said they were exempt, even though they're not exempt from the vaccination, could actually give their employer, care home owner or manager the form, and they will not be required to leave until I think it's actually Christmas Eve.
Right.
And some people are sort of using that loophole, as I believe, but legally it's fraught with difficulties.
Yes, of course
because,
it is.
We don't know. We're in unknown territory. The first sector of any sort where this has become mandatory, and we've not had any help. We've not had any handhold. We've just been left.
Clarity and leadership, Christine. Don't hold your breath. I've got 2 more questions for you. I sense I don't, because you are clearly right in the eye of the storm. The first is, just as an individual care home owner, how would you feel about the, testing every night, testing every morning for your staff as opposed to the vaccine?
They already do it.
Yes.
They test. They have a PCR test once a week. We pay them. We pay people to come in and have a PCR test every week if they're not on shift.
Right.
They do their LFD test twice a week already. The LFD test and the PCR tests are fine. They'll do them.
Sure.
But we just have to have every possible weapon in the armoury. That's why this has been brought in. I understand why it's been brought in. I believe it should be brought in.
Right.
But I hadn't counted back in April of all the angst, all the worry we've gone through because of the anti-vax element. Because people, if they want to believe it, fine. But, we can't change their minds, as you said.
No.
But we need to have some help. There's got to be some special help for this sector because it's already bed blocking. And it's going to get worse in the next few weeks.
So if Sajid Javid is listening today, what's your message for him?
He's got to do something urgently to bring us more staff. He has. Changing this may not be the answer.
Right.
It's got to get more staff for the sector. We've lost ours now. They're not going to come back to us. They've gone into domiciliary care. He's got to change it so that it's a level playing field across the care sector, for a start. I'd be very pleasant surprised if he does make this mandatory in the NHS, because it is absolutely, it's a killer for us. It'll be a killer for the NHS.
You think he might change his mind on the NHS one after seeing what happens to your sector on Thursday?
I don't know, but I wouldn't
No, I know
be
you
surprised.
don't know. No, it wouldn't surprise me either, but I thought that just the warnings that he should be heeding from people like you might have been enough to signal a rethink on the care home mandate, but it would appear not, and the clock is ticking. Chris,
I think they've got lots of precedents abroad. Other countries have done this, and we haven't had the same issues. We've depleted our staff. Brexit first, and now this. It's just a nightmare.
For the first time ever, I hope you take this as a compliment, Christine, I'm not going to make a joke about Brexit, because this is no laughing matter, is it?
No.
Take care and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Christine. It's 11:45. It is 10 to 12, and it's not a pretty picture, is it? What is going to happen on Thursday? And the answer is that an already bad situation is going to be made worse. Now, I did say earlier in the programme that in the context of a conversation about this, actually, about the vaccines, that the Brexit element for me, obviously shortage of staff in pretty much, you name the sector that has a shortage of staff, that will have been exacerbated, made worse, probably not completely caused, but definitely made worse by Brexit. I'm sorry, that's no longer a matter of opinion, it's just counting. But we can't undo it. If I could wave a magic wand now and rejoin the European Union, these care homes would still have shortages tomorrow morning. So would the haulage industry, so would farmers, so would hospitals, so would GP surgeries. Everywhere you look, there'd still be shortages on the shelves in shops. Not everywhere, but somewhere. So that's not the argument. And I think with the vaccines, a similar thing has now happened. That you can't fix this by Thursday. In fact, it may already be too late. So what happens next? 03456060973. One of the earliest tweets I got this hour, actually, I apologise, I got a bit bombarded. I'm probably going to struggle to find it now, was from an ICU nurse, Tim, who just says, on Thursday, the care home sector will be torn to shreds, which will have a direct knock-on to the NHS. The harm caused by firing 60,000 people, maximum estimate, I think, 40,000 according to the government's own figures, will be far greater than the harm of having 60,000 unvaccinated carers. As a nurse, I hang my head in despair, and there it is. That's why last week we decided, and I explained to you, that the debate about whether or not they should have it done probably should never have been had. Airtime to people saying no was airtime wasted. We'll never know how many deaths it's caused, let alone illnesses, but, you know, or indeed how many of these people have fallen for the crudular being punted by some profoundly irresponsible people. But it's happened now, so he's just right, isn't he? What's worse, having 60,000 holes in the care home sector, or having 60,000, to take Christine's testimony to heart, carefully tested but as yet unvaccinated staff in the care home sector? 11:51 is the time. Nick's in Rugby. Nick, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Nice to speak to you again.
Likewise.
Well, I'm a domiciliary care provider.
Okay.
Now, it was alluded to in your last call, but the answer is that these care home people are not going to come into our sector.
Why not?
In actual fact...
Well, she said, I mean, to be fair, again, it's experience versus experience. In her experience, the ones that she's let go from her care home have done that in some cases. So it is happening, but not on a scale that you would think was that significant.
The issue is that at the moment they're currently deciding whether or not the domiciliary care sector has the same issues.
Yes.
They're deciding, are we going to have to be fully vaccinated or not?
Yes.
So an already problematic issue is going to be exacerbated far, far more, because we're not going to be able to absorb these staff. Because if we've got to have all of our staff vaccinated, then they don't work for us either. And so... Do
you know when that decision is being taken? Are you in the same boat as the NHS, or is it because that says next... Well, they've already... We're thinking they're going to announce that today. So do you have any indication of when the decision is going to be made for your sector?
No. All they've given us is the idea that they are looking into it, that... We will find out, soon. I don't know what soon means, but we will be finding out. Now, the issue is, to get the care home staff coming to us, we've got to look at what staff we've already got.
Yes.
Across the board, it appears that probably 10 to 15% of staff in domiciliary care are not vaccinated. So now you're going to have an overburdened NHS care homes and also domiciliary, which we already are. And so I cannot believe Savage Javid has really, really not looked at what are we going to do, because there will be nowhere for these people to go. It's not like they can come out of care homes, go back home, with their spouse or family, and they'll be looked after. They won't. I haven't taken on new work for months and months and months because I can't hold the staff.
What does breaking point... I don't like asking these questions, but sometimes I have to. What does breaking point look like, then?
Breaking point for us, personally, looks like if they bring this in for us, we will no longer function. We will be out of business, and it's as simple as that.
Briefly, because I didn't ask Christine this question, what answers are you being offered when you say to your staff, who should probably be better informed about matters medical than the average Joe, but apparently aren't, when you say to them, why aren't you getting vaccinated, what are the most common answers you receive?
It's social media. It is social media.
Not just
the problem
social, sadly.
Very unsocial. What's happening is that, and this particularly, unfortunately, falls more for people who are, shall we say, of a minority, an ethnic minority background.
Okay.
They are seeing through their own networks that people are saying, oh, don't do it because they're trying to kill black people and all these sorts of
And that's what you are hearing
things
from people that you are talking to, just for the avoidance of doubt, because that's your lived experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the answer is, but there's a lot of people who are jumping up and down saying, oh, no, they're doing this. We'll go back to the Bill Gates thing. I've had people say to me, that, well, I'm not having it because I don't want them tracking me everywhere. And
that's the problem,
crazy.
isn't it? Is we're back to contempt for the con men, compassion for the conned. But because, you know... Well, in fact, I'll quote Chris Hopson, Chief Executive of NHS Providers, which represents all the NHS trusts. He said, "We understand why people are vaccine hesitant. We need to win the argument with them rather than beat them around the head." And he's speaking about the hiatus between now and next spring, when NHS staff, as Nick reminds us, could be falling under a similar requirement. And, I mean, there it is, you know, people being gaslit, groomed, misled, misinformed. But how do you sustain and retain sympathy for them while retaining contempt for the people who are misleading them? Possibly, in some cases, even fatally. Do you know the worst story in the newspapers today? And I've got one good story for you in the context of vaccines as well, so I'll do that before the hour is out. But the worst story in the newspaper today was this one. I'm going to read you 3 or 4 paragraphs of it because that's how powerful it is, and it plays very neatly into what Nick has just been describing. A baby who tested positive for COVID has died aged just 9 days after her mother contracted coronavirus while pregnant. Katie Leeming is convinced her daughter, Ivy Rose Court, would be alive today if she had not been so sick that she had to give birth 14 weeks prematurely. Miss Leeming had not been vaccinated against COVID, but said she had no regrets, saying she believed there had been too little research into the effects on pregnancies. So, how do you reach people like that after their baby has died? I do not know. 11:57 is the time. Liz is in Cricklade. Liz, what can you tell us?
Morning, James.
Hello, Liz.
Well, the question was, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I think David Cameron's going to be delighted because what we're looking at here, and it's pretty much been concluded while you've been talking about this, is systemic collapse. And this brings in the big society and the true blitz spirit that's needed.
Are you being entirely sincere here?
Yes. I mean, that's what they're trying to intend to do because...
Well, you think they're going to try and recrew with volunteers?
Well, you have to ask, why are they picking an argument on this particular issue? Yesterday, the Prime Minister went into a hospital without a mask. Now, that is not a government taking...
Well, apparently he was wearing a mask quite a lot. He just took it off whenever he thought the cameras were around, which is bizarre, but not quite as egregious as it looks at first glance.
Well, they've played the division on...
Well, that goes without saying.
Whether you're pro or
but they're not picking a fight. They really do want these people to get vaccinated. I think this is more they've muffed it up than a sinister master plan scenario, Liz.
I can't see that, James.
Really? Well, fair enough.
Last year, they allowed COVID into care homes. It actually killed my mother-in-law.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You know, and they haven't taken it seriously. This is a game to them, and it's ideology, and what they want is a completely private system. And I
thought they almost had one already.
Society.
Okay, no, all right, I do, I mean, I hope you're wrong, but I can't prove it, can I? And the only chance we've got of proving it is by watching what unravels starting on Thursday. But I think so much of it is private, and I'd find your argument more compelling if we were talking about the NHS itself than about the care homes, which is a sector where privatisation is already writ pretty large. But the idea of deliberate sabotage... Oh, man, what have we come to? I mean, how long ago was it, or how recently was it, where we would, both Liz and I, would have not even contemplated the possibility of deliberate sabotage, but we're now living in a country where you at least think, well, I mean, if we can't work out what the plan is, then a vacuum is created into which any vaguely plausible explanation can move and garner some attention. It's coming up to 12 noon. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I'm minded to do something a bit silly next, but I'll probably be talked out of it.